Transector CM by LVC Audio is the latest new addition to the CM plugin stable. It's a customizable transient designer plugin for both PC and Mac that allows you to shape the envelope response of an audio signal using its 3 separate transient gain stages. Transector CM can be used in a wide range of mixing and sound design scenarios. Add crack or body to a percussion hit, tame the room sound of a drum kit, or even creatively shape your instruments and synths' amplitude envelopes. Its attack section features a tube saturation stage and output clipper, perfect for crunchy peak control and creative envelope sculpting. The plugin also features peak and average meters for both input and output stages, plus an adjustable waveform history display for transient metering and monitoring. It's also got wet and dry to mix in the effect with the original dry signal, and look ahead and oversampling functions too. So let's take a closer look. Once the plugin is installed on your system, open a blank project in any DAW at a tempo of 125 BPM. We're going to use Transector CM to process some classic drum machine sounds taken from CM166's Vince Watson VIP series pack. Start by loading up the audio files from the tutorial files folder onto separate audio tracks, and open a new instance of Transector CM on 808snare.wav's channel and solo this track as it plays. The plugin's interface is divided into 3 sections: the waveform history display, the input and output meters, and the main control settings. The bypass button on the bottom left of the plugin will disable all processing when toggled, but the meters will stay active for easy comparison of before and after processing. Let's first look at Transector CM's input and output meters over on the right of the interface. The large blue meters respond almost instantly to the peak level of the incoming signal, and the large purple meters do likewise for the plugin's output. Like VU style meters, they slowly fall back down after each peak. The thin bouncing lines represent input and output levels measured with a slightly slower attack response, similar to a ppm meter. Continuously updating true peak output level readouts are shown in text at the top of the output meter. The other inner blue bars in the output meter are the loudness output meters, showing the dynamic range of a signal. The top of this meter represents peak, and the bottom represents RMS. The difference between these two gives us the signal's so-called crest factor, a measure of its dynamic range. The shorter this bar appears, the lower the crest factor, and vice versa. The large waveform history window provides real-time information about our snare's in and out amplitude levels by plotting amplitude vertically against time horizontally. The scale button changes the vertical gain resolution of both the display and the meters. And the display time slider adjusts the amount of horizontal scrolling time from between a minimum 0.1 seconds to a maximum 15 seconds. You can double-click any parameter to return it to its default value. Now click the small S button at the top right to open the Settings menu, where we can toggle which waveform displays are shown, and also their brightness with each's colour dial. Untoggle the 2 bottom parameters. Here our blue input and purple output amplitude displays remain, corresponding to their respective indicators over on the right in-out meters. Back in the settings menu, reactivate our bottom two displays and deactivate the top two displays. And then close the menu by hitting the S again. We're now monitoring the plugin's transient detection response for both the left and right channels. This display does not correspond to any decibel or loudness levels or changes, and instead shows how Transector CM is analysing and dividing up the incoming signal into 3 separate envelope stages. So now hit the Attack Section Solo button. The attack of a sound is its transient or fast initial spike, and we're currently monitoring the portion of our snare that Transector CM has detected as its attack stage. However, it's clear that our plugin hasn't quite isolated the front crack of the snare yet. So we'll have to adjust some settings to tighten this detection. The bottom right controls allow us to shape the way Transector CM detects and divides up the amplitude of our incoming signal. Set attack to 0.0 milliseconds, decay to 7.7 milliseconds, and detect to 1.1 milliseconds. Listen to how our snare's soloed attack portion is tightened to isolate the front end crack. And observe how the detection signal's envelope shape tightens on our waveform display as we change these settings. Each of the 3 envelope stages houses a gain control, with which we can raise and lower the amplitude of each section to reshape the volume envelope of a signal. We raise the attack section's gain knob to around 5 dB, pushing forward the front end crack of our snare to add more smack and impact to the hit. Now head back into the settings menu, deactivate the L and R trans displays, and then reactivate the input and output displays. If we now hit the bypass button whilst the snare is playing, we compare our before and after settings. We can see that our increased attack has pushed up our channel's peak level considerably, so pull the outgain dial back to -5 dB. A saturation algorithm placed after the gain stage in the attack section signal path allows us to force our snare's initial snap into some tube drive. We'll turn this up to around 40%. And then we'll back off the outgain to around -6 dB to re-level our snare again. Now pull down the clip level knob to around -7 dB whilst watching the snare's levels. This output clipping stage sits at the end of the attack stage's signal flow, after the gain and saturation stages. And we can both hear and observe how this clips off our waveform's peak. Our waveform display and meters both show that we've gained around 5 dB of extra peak headroom, whilst making our snare sound perceptibly louder. Now load up a fresh instance of Transector CM over 909loop.wav and load up the plugin's Guitar Attack preset using your DAW's preset browser on the plugin. If we solo the attack, sustain and release stages in turn, we can hear how our plugin is dividing up this loop signal into 3 envelope stages. Let's look at how we determine which part of our signal is allocated to each envelope stage. Solo the release band and increase its gain to 0 dB. Our waveform display is divided into 3 sections by 2 horizontal black lines. The upper third represents the sound's attack, the centre third is its sustain section, and the bottom third is the release stage. By modifying the position of these 2 lines, either by using the 2 width dials in the sustain section, or by clicking and dragging the lines, we can alter which envelope stage our signal will be assigned to. Move the lower width dial around slowly, and note the relationship between the bottom line's position in relation to the transient detection signals. As you hear the effect this change is having over the release stage's shape. Now unsolo the release stage and solo the sustain stage. Then move the lower width dial again. And this sustain stage can be turned off completely using its 3-band button. And finally, we'll set our plugin settings to extreme values, including cranking the attack saturation up high. And then we'll set the bottom right mix parameter to around halfway, to blend this punchy distorted signal with our original unprocessed loop. Note our reduction in dynamic range via the loudness output meters. And be sure to check out Transector CM's in-depth manual, as the plugin has several more nifty features up its sleeve.
Download over 30 exclusive plugins. Get hundreds of pro-quality samples and power up your production skills with in-depth tutorials. We break it down for you step by step, and you'll see exactly how it's done in expert video guides and producer masterclass sessions with pro producers. Get all this and more with Computer Music Magazine every month on iPad and iPhone, PC and Mac, Android, and in print.